It was my daughter's birthday, and I arrived at her house early with her favorite cake. I knocked on the door with a smile, expecting to see her face light up like when she was a little girl. But when she opened it, her expression was one of total annoyance, as if she didn't want to see me. "Oh, it's you," she muttered, without even looking me in the eye. "But before I go on, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and write in the comments. Where are you watching this video from? We love to know how far our stories reach." I still remember the smell of the almond cake with chocolate ganache I brought to my daughter Emily's house that afternoon. It was her 43rd birthday, and I had saved 3 months of my retirement pension to buy that little work of art from the French bakery she loved so much. $2,200 I didn't have, but I spent it gladly to see her smile. The taxi dropped me off in front of the mansion I had helped finance 5 years ago. A 3-story house in the best neighborhood of a beautiful coastal city with an ocean view and an infinity pool. $1,800,000 of my savings for the down payment. Money I had saved penny by penny over 45 years as a university professor, working extra hours and tutoring on weekends. I adjusted my turquoise dress, also new for the occasion, and rang the doorbell, balancing the cake in one hand and holding a small silver package in the other. It contained a pearl necklace that had belonged to my mother. 3 generations of strong women, I thought. What a wonderful legacy to pass on. The door opened, but Emily's face didn't light up as I had hoped. Her eyes barely met mine before returning to the phone in her hand. "Oh, it's you," she muttered, stepping aside to let me in. Not a kiss, not a hug, as if I were just another home delivery. "Happy birthday, my dear," I said, trying to keep the enthusiasm in my voice. "I brought your favorite cake and a special little gift." Emily sighed deeply, as if my presence were a nuisance she was forced to tolerate. "Put it on the kitchen table. I need to finish this call." I walked alone to the Italian marble kitchen, another gift from me when they remodeled the house, and placed the cake gently on the counter. Through the window, I saw the twins, my 11-year-old grandsons, playing in the pool with the swimming instructor. They didn't even notice I was there. I stood there listening to the echo of the empty house, feeling like a stranger invading a space where I clearly wasn't welcome. 15 minutes later, Emily walked into the kitchen. She was stunning as always, perfectly colored hair, flawless makeup, manicured nails. All of this was paid for by the beauty clinic I had financed for her 8 years ago, $350,000 for her to achieve her dream of being an entrepreneur. A loan I had taken out using my apartment as collateral, which was never repaid. "So," she said, opening the refrigerator and taking out a bottle of sparkling water, "did you just come to drop off the cake, or are you staying for dinner too?" The coldness in her voice cut me like a knife. I swallowed hard, trying to control the disappointment. "I thought maybe we could spend some time together on your birthday. We haven't seen each other in almost 2 months. She replied, checking her phone again. "Actually, I have plans for later. Daniel is taking me out to dinner at the Tide, just the 2 of us." Daniel, her 3rd husband, a man who lived off unspecified investments and who curiously always needed my financial help for his emergency projects. The last one had been just 3 weeks ago, $60,000 for a supposed import business that couldn't wait. Money I had taken from my medical treatment savings. "I understand," I replied, trying to hide the pain in my voice. "Maybe we can have lunch tomorrow then." Emily rolled her eyes and finally looked directly at me. Her face was tense, as if she were holding back something she'd wanted to say for a long time. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, pointing to the high stools around the kitchen island. "Sit down." I obeyed, feeling a knot forming in my stomach. I knew that tone. It was the same one she used as a child before saying something deliberately cruel to test my limits. "I've been thinking a lot lately." She began slowly turning the water glass between her fingers. "About birthdays, about life, about what would truly make me happy." I nodded, trying to look encouraging. "Of course, dear, tell me what you want. Maybe I can help in some way." Emily slammed the glass on the counter and looked me straight in the eye. What I saw there chilled me to the bone. It wasn't love or even passing irritation. It was pure contempt. "The only thing I'd really like for my birthday," she said slowly, pronouncing each word with deliberate cruelty, "is for you to just disappear from my life, preferably to die." The world stopped. The air was sucked from the room. I tried to speak, but my throat closed up. It was as if someone had physically punched me in the chest. "What?" was all I could whisper. "Did you hear me?" she continued with calculated coldness now. "I'm tired of you, Mom. Tired of your constant calls, your unexpected visits, your way of always meddling in my life with your outdated advice and your unbearable emotional neediness." My hands began to tremble uncontrollably. 74 years of life, 43 years of being her mother, and never ever did I imagine I would hear such words from the mouth of my only daughter. "Emily," I managed to say through forming tears, "I'm your mother. I gave you everything. I sacrificed everything for you." "Exactly," she exclaimed, getting up from the stool. "That's why you're suffocating me. I can't breathe with your constant presence. I need space. I need freedom. I need to live my life without having to deal with your expectations and your emotional drama." I looked at the birthday cake, the candles still in the box waiting to be lit. Everything I had imagined for that day, hugs, laughter, shared memories, vanished like smoke. "But Emily," I tried one more time, "I just want to be close to you, to be a part of your life. You're all I have." "And that's exactly the problem," she replied, crossing her arms. "The fact that I'm all you have. Fix your own life and leave me alone." I got up from the stool, my legs shaking so much I was afraid I'd fall. I picked up my purse and the small package with the pearl necklace. The cake would stay. Maybe the twins would appreciate it even if their mother couldn't. "I can't believe you're saying this to me," I muttered, "after everything I did for you." "Everything you did," she laughed sarcastically. "Mom, everything you did was for your own benefit, to feel needed to have control over my life. But I'm not a child anymore, and I don't need you suffocating me anymore." I walked to the door, each step costing me years of my life. On the threshold, I turned back one last time, hoping to see some regret in her eyes, some trace of that sweet little girl I had raised with so much love. But all I saw was impatience. Impatience for me to leave, so she could get on with her life, free from the burden I apparently represented. "Happy birthday, Emily," I whispered, and I walked out, closing the door softly behind me. What my daughter didn't know as she watched me leave that sunny afternoon was that she had ignited something inside me that had been dormant for decades. A flame not of self-destruction, but of rebirth. The taxi dropped me off in front of my small apartment downtown, a modest 2-bedroom place I had bought with the money from selling the family home after my husband's death 20 years ago. I stumbled inside, dropped my purse on the floor, and collapsed onto the worn-out sofa. The same sofa where I had cradled baby Emily, where I had read her stories every night, where I had dried her tears after every disappointment. Her words echoed in my mind like a cruel refrain. "I wish you would die." My own daughter had wished for my death as a birthday present. The pain was physical, an overwhelming weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. I spent a sleepless night remembering every moment, every sacrifice, every penny I had invested in her over 4 decades. When Emily was 5 and diagnosed with severe asthma, I worked extra shifts at the university to pay for specialized treatments the insurance wouldn't cover. It was $18,000 in consultations and medication money I got by selling the wedding jewelry my husband had given me. At 16, when she wanted to be an exchange student in the United States, I mortgaged this very apartment to pay the $250,000 for the program. "Thanks, Mommy," she had said then, hugging me tightly at the airport. "You're simply the best mom in the world." Words that now seemed to belong to another life, another person. In college, when Emily decided to change her major 3 times from law to architecture, then to business, I paid for every semester without a single complaint. In total, it was almost $480,000 money I earned by teaching extra classes on weekends and holidays, sacrificing any personal life I might have had. When she married her first husband in an extravagant ceremony for 300 guests at the city's best hotel, I was the one who paid for everything, $420,000. The designer dress, the imported flowers, the orchestra, the gourmet banquet. "It's the happiest day of my life, Mom," she had said, radiant in her princess dress, "and it's all thanks to you." The divorce came 2 years later, followed by an even more expensive second marriage, which also ended in less than 3 years. And then Daniel, the current husband, the 3-story house, the beauty clinic, the luxury car I helped finance when the old one broke down for $220,000. The private bilingual schools for the twins, $48,000 per term. At dawn, I started doing the math. I found an old box where I kept all the receipts, all the transfer slips, all the contracts I had signed over the years. Not out of mistrust, but for organization. An old math professor never loses her habits. Sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of cold tea I had no heart to drink, I began to list every amount, every date, every reason. The total stunned me. More than $4,800,000 over 43 years. Almost $5 million I had dedicated to my daughter's happiness. And all of that to hear that her greatest wish was for my death. Something strange happened as I stared at those numbers. The stabbing pain I had felt all night began to transform into something different. Not rage, though there was rage too, but a crystal clarity I had never experienced before. A deep understanding that I had been manipulated for decades by someone who saw my love as a utility, not a sacred bond. If I had invested those almost $5 million in myself, if I had traveled, studied more, bought a better house, taken care of my health, planned a comfortable retirement, where would I be now? Certainly not in this small apartment counting the pennies of my dwindling pension, postponing medical treatments, so I could continue helping a daughter who wished me dead. At 6 in the morning, I did something I had never done before. I picked up the phone and blocked Emily's number. Then I blocked Daniel's. Then all the numbers associated with her family. It was a small but symbolically powerful gesture. My first act of self-preservation in 4 decades. I took a long bath, put on my best clothes, a pantsuit I rarely wore to save it, and left the house with a definite purpose that didn't involve my daughter for the first time in years. First stop, the bank. The same bank where Emily and I had a joint account for emergencies into which I regularly deposited small sums for any unforeseen events in her life. An account that at that moment had a balance of $180,000. "Good morning, Linda." The manager, Mr. Ortega, greeted me. He had known me for years. "How can I help you today? I want to close joint account number 4N522678891. I replied with a calm that surprised me. "Are you sure that account has a considerable balance?" he warned, checking his computer. "Absolutely sure." I confirmed, signing the forms with a steady hand. "I want to transfer all that money to my personal account, please." Seeing that $180,000 returned to my own account gave me a strange sense of power, a power I hadn't felt in decades. It was just the beginning. Next stop, the real estate financing office. When Emily and Daniel bought the oceanfront mansion, I not only provided the down payment, but I also co-signed the loan. That meant if they couldn't pay, the responsibility would fall on me, but it also meant I had rights to that property. Linda, the loan officer, Mrs. Ramirez, greeted me with a smile. "What brings you here today?" "I want to review the terms of the financing contract where I appear as a co-signer," I explained. "I need to understand exactly what my rights and obligations are." As she looked for the documents, I remembered the day I signed those papers. Emily had cried with emotion. "Thank you, Mom. You're our guardian angel. I love you so much," she had said, hugging me tightly. Daniel had also thanked me profusely, assuring me they would never miss a payment. "Here is all the documentation," Mrs. Ramirez said, placing a thick folder in front of me. "As a co-signer, you are responsible for the payments if the primary holders cannot make them. But you also have the right to claim the property if you believe the debtors will not be able to meet their obligations." "Exactly," I replied, carefully examining each page. What would be the next steps if I decided to exercise my rights as a co-signer? "You would need to demonstrate that there is a risk of default or that there have already been significant delays," she explained. "What, Mrs.?" Ramirez didn't know, and what Emily had unconsciously revealed to me the week before was that Daniel had recently lost a substantial sum in a failed investment and that they had been late on the last mortgage payment. Information she shared casually, probably hoping I would offer to help, as I always did. "Perfect," I muttered, collecting copies of all the important documents. "And if I wanted to start that process—" Mrs. Ramirez looked at me curiously, but remained professional. "I can schedule a meeting with our legal department if you wish." "Please do." When I left the office, I felt a strange lightness, as if I were floating on the hot city sidewalks. For 43 years, I had lived for Emily. I had sacrificed my own dreams, my money, my time, my health, all to give her the life she always wanted. And the result? She wished for my death as a birthday present. My next stop was a place I hadn't visited in years, the New Horizons travel agency, specializing in new beginnings for seniors. I had kept a brochure from them for years, secretly dreaming of possibilities that always seemed out of reach. "Good afternoon," a young advisor named Lucy greeted me. "How can I help you?" "I saw your program about retirees abroad," I replied, sitting comfortably in the chair across from her desk. "I would like complete information on how a 74-year-old woman can start a new life in Spain." The following days were a roller coaster of emotions and secret preparations. Every morning I woke up with a mix of pain, determination, and something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. It was as if I had woken up from a long trance where I lived only to satisfy my daughter's whims, and now finally I was living for myself. On Tuesday, my phone rang insistently. It was Emily. I ignored the call. She called me 5 more times, leaving increasingly irritated messages. "Mom, I need to talk to you." "Mom, are you okay? Why aren't you answering?" "Mom, the twins have a school presentation on Thursday, and we need you to watch them afterward." "Mom, I'm starting to get worried." The irony was not lost on me. The same woman who had wished for my death as a birthday gift was now worried because I wasn't answering her calls. Not because she missed me or cared about my well-being, but because she needed me for something. On Wednesday, I had a visit from my neighbor and lifelong friend Dorothy, a 70-year-old woman who had silently witnessed all my sacrifices for Emily over the decades. "Linda," she said, sitting in my living room with a cup of coffee, "you look different. Did something happen?" I told her everything. Every painful word from Emily's birthday, every detail of the plans I was making. Dorothy listened in silence, her eyes gradually filling with tears. "My God, Linda," she murmured when I finished. "I can't believe Emily would say something so cruel after everything you did for her." "The most painful part is that she said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world," I explained. "As if I were just a nuisance in her life that needed to be eliminated. And you're really going to Spain?" "Yes," I replied firmly. "I've already bought the ticket. I'm leaving next week." Dorothy held my hands gently. "You know you have my full support, right? What Emily did is unforgivable." "There's something else," I said, lowering my voice. "I'm going to need your help with something very special." I explained my full plan. I wanted Emily to believe I had died at least for a while. Dorothy would be my accomplice, the person who would find my empty apartment and the farewell letter I would leave. "It's brilliant," Dorothy murmured with a mischievous smile. "That ungrateful girl is finally going to understand what it means to lose you." "Will you help me?" "Of course I will. In fact, I think it's exactly what Emily needs to wake up." That night, I worked on the most important letter of my life, the letter that would change everything forever. I wrote and rewrote every word, making sure it conveyed exactly what I wanted to say. "My dear Emily," I began, "you asked me for a birthday present to disappear from your life, and I have decided to grant your wish. By the time you read this letter, I will be far from here, starting the life I should have lived decades ago instead of sacrificing everything for you." I continued writing for hours, documenting every penny I had spent on her, every sacrifice I had made, every opportunity I had lost, by always being available for her needs. But it wasn't a bitter letter, it was an educational one. I wanted her to understand exactly what she had lost. Along with this letter, you will find all the legal documents I signed this week, I continued. The change of the will, the cancellation of your supplemental health insurance plan that I paid for, the notification that as a co-signer of your mortgage, I have decided to exercise my rights due to your recent financial instability, and the closure of all the benefits you received from me. It was an 18-page letter that meticulously detailed everything that would change in her life now that I had disappeared, exactly as she wanted. Your life will be much easier without me, I concluded, but it will also be much more expensive. I hope it's worth it. On Thursday, while I was packing my most important belongings into 2 suitcases, I received another call from Emily. Again, I didn't answer. She called me 4 more times, leaving increasingly desperate messages. In the last one, her voice sounded genuinely distressed. "Mom, please call me. Something happened. I need your help. The bank called us for an emergency meeting tomorrow about the mortgage. Please call me as soon as you get this message." So that was it. The bank had already contacted her about my request to review the contract. Reality was beginning to set in. On Friday, Daniel showed up at my door. He looked exhausted and desperate, with deep dark circles under his eyes and an unshaven beard, a very different image from the always elegant and confident man I knew. "Linda," he said with a pleading voice, "Emily told me what happened between you two. I know what she said was terrible, even unforgivable, but please don't do this to our family." "Do what?" I asked, feigning innocence. "The bank told us you're starting a process to take the house because of late mortgage payments. Please, Linda, it was just 1 month. I had some problems with investments, but I'll sort it all out, I promise you." It was fascinating. When Emily wanted to get rid of me, I was a nuisance. But when they realized I controlled the financial reins that maintained their luxurious lifestyle, suddenly I was important again. "Daniel," I said calmly, "your wife was very clear with me. My presence in her life is a burden she no longer wants to bear. I'm just respecting her wishes." "But Linda, you know how Emily is when she's angry. She didn't mean it." "She didn't mean it because she sounded quite convincing when she wished for my death as a birthday present." Daniel hung his head. He knew he had no argument to defend the indefensible. "Please," he insisted, "give me a chance to fix this. I'll talk to Emily. I'll make her understand how wrong she is." "It's too late," I replied, slowly closing the door. "Give my grandsons a kiss for me." Saturday was my last day in the city, where I had spent my entire life. I walked through the places that had been important to me. The university where I taught for 38 years, the park where I took Emily as a child, the church where I married her father. It was my silent farewell to a life I had lived completely for others. On Sunday, I would begin a life that finally I would live for myself. On Sunday morning, Dorothy knocked on my door as we had arranged. She brought fresh coffee and a conspiratorial smile that filled me with energy. "Ready for your great escape?" she asked, winking. "More than ready," I replied, carrying my 2 suitcases to the door. "Do you have the spare keys to my apartment?" "Right here," she said, showing the set of keys I had given her the night before. "And I also have the letter for Emily and all the documents you're leaving." We had planned everything meticulously. Dorothy would wait until Tuesday to go to Emily's apartment and give her the documents, pretending she had found my apartment empty and had become worried about my disappearance. "Remember," I instructed her as we waited for the taxi, "you have to seem genuinely concerned. Tell her I didn't answer the phone for 2 days, that you knocked on my door and I didn't answer, and when you used the emergency keys, you found the apartment empty and the letter." "Don't worry, Linda. I was an amateur theater teacher for 20 years. It will be the performance of a lifetime," Dorothy assured me with a mischievous smile. The taxi arrived promptly at 6 in the morning. As the driver loaded my suitcases, I took one last look at my apartment. I had lived there for 15 years, but strangely I felt no nostalgia. It was as if I were finally breaking free from a prison I had built myself. "To the airport?" the taxi driver asked. "To the airport," I confirmed, and I felt as if those 2 words marked the beginning of my new existence. The plane ride to Barcelona was long but peaceful. For the first time in decades, no one knew where I was. No one could call me to ask for favors, money, or time. It was an intoxicating feeling of freedom I hadn't experienced since before becoming a mother. During the nearly 12-hour flight, I wrote in my journal everything that had happened in the last week. Every detail, every emotion, every decision that had brought me to this moment, suspended in the sky between my past of self-denial and my future of self-discovery. This is the first time in 43 years I wrote that I am doing something completely for myself without calculating how it will benefit Emily. It's terrifying and liberating at the same time. I arrived in Barcelona on Monday morning local time. A representative from the travel agency was waiting for me at the airport with a sign bearing my name. He was a young, friendly man named Miguel who spoke Spanish with a strong Catalan accent. "Mrs. Linda," he greeted me with a genuine smile. "Welcome to Spain. I hope you're ready for a new adventure." "More than ready," I replied. And for the first time in weeks, my smile was completely authentic. Miguel took me to a small but charming furnished apartment in the Gothic Quarter, which the agency had rented for a month while I decided if I wanted to stay permanently. It was a third-floor apartment in a centuries-old building with windows overlooking a tree-lined square and flowered balconies on the neighboring buildings. "Here is all the information about the city," Miguel said, handing me a thick folder. "Recommended restaurants, cultural activities, social groups for expats, Catalan classes, medical contacts in case you need them. I also scheduled a meeting with a financial advisor for Wednesday to help you with the paperwork if you decide to stay permanently." That afternoon, after a short rest, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went for a walk with no specific destination, no schedules, no commitments, no one waiting for me to solve their problems. I walked through the narrow, winding streets of the Gothic Quarter, marveling at the medieval architecture, the small cafes on the corners, the craft shops. I sat in a plaza and ordered a coffee with milk and a portion of churros. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, watching the pigeons, the tourists, the locals. A strange feeling began to form in my chest. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't guilt. It was peace. As I walked back to the apartment in the late afternoon, I mentally calculated how much money I had spent on Emily in just the last 5 years. Between the down payment for the house, the payments for the beauty clinic, the car, the twins' schools, the constant emergencies, it had been at least $2.3 million. Money I could have used to travel the world, to live comfortably, to fulfill the dreams I had postponed for decades. Instead, I gave it all to a daughter who considered my love a burden and my presence a nuisance. At 8 o'clock at night, Barcelona time, I calculated it would be 2 in the afternoon in the coastal city back home. Dorothy would be getting ready to go to Emily's apartment to deliver the letter that would change everything. I sat on the small balcony of my temporary apartment sipping a glass of Spanish red wine, and I waited. I knew that in a few hours my phone would start ringing desperately. Emily would finally understand what it really meant to lose me. At midnight, my phone began to vibrate insistently. It was Emily. I let it ring until it stopped. Immediately it rang again, and again, and again. On the 5th try, I answered. "Mom!" she screamed, her voice choked with sobs. "Where are you? Dorothy showed up at the house with a letter from you. She said you disappeared. What's going on? What is this madness?" "Hello, Emily," I replied calmly, watching the lights of the old city as I spoke. "Have you read the letter?" "Yes, I read it." "Have you gone crazy? How could you do this to us? Where are you?" "I am exactly where I need to be, far away from you, just as you wished." "But I didn't want that. I didn't want you to really leave. I was just angry, frustrated." There it was. Emily's typical tactic, minimizing the damage she had caused, making me feel guilty for reacting to her cruelty. "You didn't mean it when you told me your greatest birthday wish was for me to die?" I asked, because you sounded quite convincing. I was just stressed. Daniel lost money on an investment. The kids are having trouble at school. The clinic isn't doing well. I shouldn't have taken it out on you." "You're right. You shouldn't have. But it's done, and words can't be unsaid." "But Mom, please come back. We need you. I need you." How interesting this was. Now she needed me. Now that she had read the letter detailing all the financial benefits she had lost, now that she knew she might lose the house, now that she understood she would have to pay for her own supplemental health insurance and find someone to watch the twins when she wanted to go out. "Do you need me or my money?" I asked directly. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I need you," she finally muttered, but her voice didn't sound convincing. "Emily, for 43 years I lived for you. I sacrificed my dreams, my money, my time, my opportunities. And when I finally needed to feel that you loved and valued me, you told me you'd rather I were dead. Those words broke my heart in a way that can never be repaired." "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm truly so sorry." "Apologies are not enough, Emily. The damage is done. And you know what? Maybe it was the best thing you could have ever said to me because it finally opened my eyes and made me realize I've been living my whole life the wrong way." "What do you mean?" "I mean that for the first time in decades, I'm living for myself and it's wonderful." "Where are you, Mom? Please tell me," Emily pleaded, her voice choked with tears. "The twins are asking for Grandma. They don't understand why you disappeared." It was fascinating how now that I was unavailable, my grandson suddenly missed me. For all these years, when I canceled my plans to take care of them, when I bought them expensive gifts, when I took them to the park while Emily went shopping, it was just what was expected of me. But now that I was gone, my absence was felt. "The boys will be fine," I replied, looking at the stars over Barcelona. "They are resilient. What they will learn is that actions have consequences and that hurtful words can destroy relationships forever." "But Mom, please, you can't just disappear like this. What if something happens to you? What if you get sick? How will we know?" Now she was worried about my well-being. How convenient. "Emily, in the last 3 years, I had 2 high blood pressure episodes that sent me to the hospital. Do you know how many times you visited me? 0. You always had something more important to do." "That's not true," she protested weakly. "It is true. The first time I called you from the emergency room, you said you couldn't come because you had a party at a friend's house. The second time, it was Daniel's birthday and you were celebrating." The silence on the other end of the line confirmed she remembered each occasion perfectly. I thought it wasn't serious," she muttered. "Of course, because my health was never a priority for you, but my checks were." "It's not about the money," Emily yelled. "It's about you. I miss you, Mom." "Do you miss me, or do you miss having someone available 24 hours a day to solve your problems?" I hung up without waiting for an answer. The phone rang again, but this time I silenced it completely. I needed peace to enjoy my first night of freedom in a new country. The following days were a constant discovery not just of Barcelona, but of myself. There were parts of my personality, interests, and desires that had been dormant for decades while I lived for Emily. Now they were waking up one by one like flowers after a long drought. I discovered I loved Gothic architecture and could spend hours admiring the details of the Barcelona Cathedral. I realized I had a natural talent for languages and that Catalan, with its similarities to Spanish, was not as difficult as I imagined. I rediscovered my love for mathematics, something I had taught for years but hadn't practiced for pleasure in a long time. On Wednesday, I had my meeting with the Spanish financial advisor. He was an older man named Mr. Ferrer, who helped me understand all my options for permanent residency in Spain. "With your current savings and your retirement pension," he explained, "you can live comfortably here for many years. Spain has excellent health programs for foreign retirees, and the quality of life in Barcelona is exceptional." For the first time in years, I talked openly about my finances, without worrying about saving money for Emily's emergencies. It was liberating to calculate my expenses based solely on my own needs and desires. "You can also invest part of your savings here in Spain," Mr. Ferrer continued. "The returns are stable and secure. In 5 years, you could significantly increase your wealth if you invest wisely." Increase my wealth. How many times had I had that opportunity? But I always preferred to spend the money on my daughter's whims. "Is there anything else I should know?" I asked. "We have many clients in situations similar to yours," the advisor added with an understanding smile. Older people who came to Spain seeking a new beginning after complicated family relationships, you are not alone in this experience. That information comforted me deeply. I wasn't the only mother who had been manipulated and discarded by ungrateful children. There was a whole community of people who had chosen their own happiness over the toxic demands of their families. On Friday, I joined a hiking group for senior expats. There were 12 people, all between 65 and 80 years old, all seeking adventure and new experiences. During the walk through the hills surrounding Barcelona, I struck up a conversation with a woman named Luisa, a 76-year-old Italian who had arrived in Spain 3 years earlier. "What brought you here?" she asked, as we admired the panoramic view of the city. "A daughter who told me her greatest birthday wish was for me to die," I replied without a filter. I no longer had the energy to soften reality. Luisa looked at me with wide eyes. "Are you serious?" "Completely. After financing her house, practically raising her children, and sacrificing my retirement for her needs, she told me my presence in her life was an unbearable burden." "My God," Luisa murmured, "and what did you do?" "What, I disappeared from her life, and here I am." Luisa smiled with admiration. "You are very brave. It took me 7 years to make the decision to walk away from my toxic family. My son and daughter-in-law treated me like a walking ATM." For the rest of the walk, Luisa and I shared our stories. She had come to Spain after realizing her adult children only contacted her when they needed money for their vacations, their new cars, or their whims. When she decided to set limits, they accused her of being a selfish mother and threatened to not let her see her grandchildren. "The first few months were difficult," Luisa confessed as we descended a wooded path. "The guilt consumed me. I thought maybe I really was selfish, that a good mother should always sacrifice for her children." "And what changed your perspective?" "I realized my children never asked if I was happy, if I had enough money for my own needs, or if my constant sacrifices were hurting me. They only cared about what I could give them. That's not love, Linda. It's exploitation." Her words resonated deeply in my heart. For decades, I had mistaken emotional manipulation for filial love, constant demands for genuine need. At the end of the walk, Luisa invited me to a support group that met bi-weekly older women who had made the difficult decision to prioritize their well-being over toxic family expectations. I accepted immediately. That night, I turned on my phone for the first time in 3 days. I had 78 missed calls and 32 text messages. Most were from Emily and Daniel, but there were also some from unknown numbers, probably friends they had recruited to try to locate me. I read the messages chronologically, observing the evolution of my daughter's panic. The first ones were still emotional. "Please, Mom, come back. We need you. The kids are crying for you." But gradually they became more desperate and focused on financial issues. "The bank called us for another meeting. They say you requested a review of the contract as a co-signer. They can't take our house away over a misunderstanding." By the 4th day, the messages had turned aggressive. "This is ridiculous, Mom. You're ruining our lives over a temper tantrum. Act like an adult and come back." And finally, desperate. "I called all the hospitals, the police, your friends. Nobody knows where you are. If something happens to you, it's going to be my fault. Please just tell me you're okay." It was fascinating to observe how at no point did Emily genuinely apologize for wishing me dead. At no point did she acknowledge the cruelty of her words or express real remorse. Everything revolved around the negative consequences my absence had for her. I decided to reply to one last message. "I am perfectly fine and happier than I have been in years. What you are experiencing now are the natural consequences of your actions. I hope this experience helps you understand the value of the people you love before it's too late with others in your life." The reply came immediately. "Please, Mom, we can fix this. I promise I will never say horrible things again. Just come back." I wrote my final reply. "Empty promises don't fix broken hearts. Emily, the words you said to me revealed what you really think of me. You can't undo that truth with desperate promises." After sending that message, I blocked her number and all numbers associated with Daniel. I also blocked the unknown numbers that had called me. It was time to close this chapter once and for all. In the following week, I met with Mr. Ferrer again to sign the papers that would allow me to reside permanently in Spain. I also made arrangements to definitively transfer my retirement pension and begin the process of selling my apartment back home. "Are you sure you want to make it permanent?" Mr. Ferrer asked. "It's a very significant decision." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I replied, signing each document with a firm hand. "For the first time in decades, I'm making decisions based on my own happiness, not on the demands of others." That afternoon, I received a call from Dorothy, my dear neighbor and accomplice. Her voice sounded lively. "Linda, you're not going to believe this," she said. "Emily came to my apartment yesterday crying hysterically. She begged me to tell you to come back, that it had been a terrible misunderstanding." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her the truth, that what she had said to you was unforgivable, and that if I were you, I would have disappeared forever too." "You should have seen her face when she realized that even the neighbors knew how cruel she had been to you." "Did she mention anything about the financial problems?" "Oh yes, she said that without your help, they can't pay the mortgage, that the bank is pressuring them, that Daniel can't resolve the financial situation, and that the kids need things for school that they can't afford. Basically, she realized everything I did for them when she lost it." It was exactly what I expected. She didn't miss me as a person. She missed my function as a financial provider and problem solver. "Dorothy," I asked her, "when anyone asks about me, especially Emily, I want you to say that I am dead to them, because in a way it's true. The Linda who constantly sacrificed for an ungrateful daughter really died on her birthday." "I understand perfectly," Dorothy replied. "And you know what I think, it's the best death you could have chosen." 3 weeks after my arrival in Spain, my new life had taken shape in ways I never imagined. I enrolled in Catalan classes 3 times a week. I started a watercolor course on Tuesdays and Thursdays, discovering an artistic talent I didn't even know I possessed. I joined a book club for expats that met on Sundays. For the first time in decades, my schedule was full of activities that I had chosen, activities that brought me pleasure and personal growth, not obligations imposed by the needs of others. But the most surprising transformation was financial. Without Emily's constant demands, my savings were not just stable, they were growing. The investments I had made with Mr. Ferrer were already showing positive returns, and for the first time I could plan my financial future based solely on my own needs. That April Wednesday, while I was having my morning coffee on the sunny balcony of my apartment, I received a call from an international number I didn't recognize. I hesitated to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mrs. Linda Aguirre," a female voice with a familiar accent asked. "Yes, this is she." "Who's speaking?" "My name is Raquel Mendoza. I'm a social worker with the Department of Family Services back home. I'm calling because we received a report concerning your well-being." My blood ran cold. "A report? What kind?" "Your daughter, Emily Aguirre, filed a report alleging that you might be suffering from dementia or cognitive decline, and that you have made financial and life decisions that put you at risk. According to her, you disappeared suddenly and are living in precarious conditions abroad, possibly under the influence of third parties." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emily had gone to the extreme of involving social services, inventing a mental illness to invalidate my decisions and force my return. "Ms. Mendoza," I replied in a firm voice, "I am not suffering from dementia or cognitive decline. I am living in Spain by my own choice, in a comfortable apartment with excellent medical care and in perfect mental health. My daughter's allegations are completely false." "I understand your position, Mrs. Aguirre, but we need to verify your well-being. Would it be possible to coordinate a medical and psychological evaluation through the consulate in Spain?" "Of course," I replied without hesitation. "I am willing to undergo any evaluation that proves I am in perfect mental health and that my decisions were made with full lucidity." After coordinating the details for the evaluation, I hung up the phone, feeling a mixture of rage and disbelief. Emily had crossed a line of no return. Not only had she wished for my death, but now she was trying to destroy my mental credibility to regain control over my money and my life. I immediately called my lawyer back home, Mr. Vargas, who had helped me with all the legal paperwork before my departure. "Linda," he greeted me with concern. "I'm glad to hear your voice. I've had a very interesting week with your daughter." "I can imagine. I just spoke with social services. Emily is accusing me of having dementia." "That's not all," Mr. Vargas sighed. "She also hired another lawyer to try to contest all the legal changes you made before you left. She's claiming you were not of sound mind when you signed them." "Can she do that?" "She can try, but she doesn't have a solid legal basis. I have recordings of all our conversations where you clearly demonstrate full lucidity, besides the fact that you meticulously planned your departure and are living independently in Spain contradicts any allegation of cognitive decline." "What else is she doing?" "She tried to get access to your bank accounts, claiming concern for your well-being. She also wanted to interrupt the process of reclaiming the house, but since everything is legally supported and she herself signed documents acknowledging recent financial problems, she has no valid arguments." It was incredible how far Emily was willing to go to recover the financial benefits she had lost. "Mr. Vargas, I want you to prepare a defamation lawsuit against my daughter. Her false allegations about my mental state could affect my reputation and my legal rights." "It will be a pleasure," he replied with satisfaction. "After seeing how she treated you, I think it's time she faced the legal consequences of her actions." 2 days later, I appeared at the consulate in Barcelona for the medical and psychological evaluations. The appointed doctor, Dr. Torres, was an experienced man who immediately understood the situation. "Mrs. Aguirre," he told me after an exhaustive 3-hour evaluation, "you are not only in perfect mental health, but the decisions you have made demonstrate admirable lucidity and courage. Your daughter is clearly trying to manipulate the legal system to recover financial benefits." "Will that be officially documented?" "Absolutely. I will send a detailed report to social services explaining that the allegations are unfounded and that you are living an independent and healthy life in Spain." That same afternoon, I received a call from the social worker. "Mrs. Aguirre, we received the medical report from the consulate. It is clear that your daughter's allegations are baseless. We are going to close the case and notify Emily that her complaints have been deemed unfounded." "Thank you," I replied. "Will this be recorded in any way?" "Yes, it will be documented that she made a false report about the well-being of a family member, which can have legal implications if it is repeated." Perfect. Not only had Emily failed in her attempt to invalidate my decisions, but she now had an official record of making false reports. That night, I decided to do something I had been putting off: write a detailed account of my experience, not for Emily, but for other women who might be living in similar situations of manipulation and emotional abuse by adult children. I wrote for 4 hours, documenting every sacrifice I had made, every manipulation I had suffered, and every step I had taken to reclaim my dignity and my life. I titled the text, "When a Mother's Love Becomes Self-Destruction, My Story of Liberation at 74. I sent the text to a blog I had discovered specializing in stories of older women who had found the courage to radically change their lives. A week later, I received an enthusiastic response from the editor. "Linda," she wrote, "your story is powerful and inspiring. We received hundreds of comments from women who completely identify with your experience. Would you be willing to participate in a video interview for our YouTube channel?" I accepted immediately. It was time to use my experience to help other women trapped in toxic family dynamics. The interview was published 2 weeks later and quickly went viral. Thousands of women shared similar stories of adult children who emotionally manipulated and financially exploited them. The comments were a catalog of pain and recognition. "My 37-year-old son lives in my house, pays no rent, and insults me when I ask him to look for a job," one woman wrote. "My daughter only calls me when she needs money for vacation, but never has time to visit me when I'm sick," another shared. "I thought I was the only mother who felt used by her own children," a third confessed. But the most shocking thing came a week after the interview was published. I received an email from an address I immediately recognized. It was from Daniel, my son-in-law. "Linda," he wrote, "I saw your interview on YouTube. I need you to know that I completely agree with you. What Emily said was unforgivable, and the way she treated you for years is unacceptable. I witnessed how she manipulated and used you, but I never had the courage to confront her because we were so dependent on your financial help." He continued, "I want you to know that the twins miss you very much and don't understand why you don't come to see them anymore. Emily told them you are sick and can't visit, but I think they deserve to know the truth when they are older." The email ended. "I know it's probably too late for apologies, but I wanted you to know that at least one person in this family recognizes how much you sacrificed for us. I hope you are happy in your new life." I read the email 3 times before deciding how to respond. Finally, I wrote, "Daniel, I appreciate your honesty, but late apologies don't change the damage done. I hope this experience helps you be a better husband and father, and that you teach your sons to value the people who love them before it's too late." It was the first time someone in my family had publicly acknowledged the abuse I had suffered. That didn't change my decision to keep my distance, but it gave me a sense of validation I had needed for years. My new life in Spain was flourishing in unimaginable ways. I had genuine friends who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give. I rediscovered hobbies and passions. I had peace of mind and financial stability, and most importantly, I had dignity. 6 months after my arrival in Spain, my life had taken a shape I never dreamed possible. It was a sunny spring morning when I received a call that would change everything once again. It was Dorothy, my dear neighbor and accomplice back home. "Linda," she said with a lively voice, "you have to hear this. Emily lost the house." My heart stopped for a second. Despite everything, a part of me still worried about my grandchildren's well-being. "What happened exactly?" I asked. "The bank foreclosed last week. Daniel couldn't recover the money he lost. They fell behind on 3 more payments, and since you were the co-signer and exercised your legal rights, the bank proceeded with the foreclosure. Emily came to me yesterday crying desperately. And the children? They're fine. They moved to a small apartment on the other side of town. Daniel finally got a stable job at a tourism company, earning much less than before, but at least it's something secure. Emily also had to go back to work at the clinic, not as the owner, but as an employee." It was a strange mix of feelings I experienced. I didn't feel joy at their suffering, but a deep satisfaction of justice. For the first time in their lives, Emily and Daniel were living with the real consequences of their decisions without having someone to rescue them. "There's something else," Dorothy continued. "Emily asked me if I knew how to contact you. She said she wants to genuinely apologize, that she finally understands everything she lost when she lost you." "And what did you tell her?" "I said that some wounds are too deep to heal, and some words can never be unsaid. I also said that you are flourishing in your new life, and that it's probably better for both of you that she doesn't try to contact you." Dorothy was right. Over these 6 months, I had built an inner peace that I didn't want to risk for empty promises from a daughter who repeatedly showed she only valued me when she needed me. That afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Mr. Vargas. "Linda, I have some interesting news," he said. "Emily's house was sold by the bank, and as you were the co-signer, you are entitled to recover your initial investment of $1.8 million plus accrued interest." "How much is that in total?" $2.1 million. "The bank has already approved the transfer. The money will be in your Spanish account next week." It was incredible. Not only had I recovered my original investment, but I had gained an additional $300,000, money that would have been lost forever if I had continued to be the eternally self-sacrificing mother. "There's something else," Mr. Vargas continued. "Your apartment back home has finally been sold. After commissions and expenses, the net value is $820,000. In total, I was receiving nearly $3 million in assets I had considered lost. With my existing savings and the investments I had made in Spain, my net worth now exceeded $5 million. At 74, I was richer than I had ever been in my entire life. That night, I celebrated at my favorite restaurant in Plaza Real. I ordered the best Spanish cava and toasted to the brave woman who had the courage to start over when all seemed lost. As I dined, I reflected on the whole journey. I had started this journey as a broken and humiliated mother, devastated by the cruel words of an ungrateful daughter. But now I was an independent, financially stable woman surrounded by genuine friends and living the life I had always dreamed of. The next day, I decided to do something I had been considering for weeks, to write a full book about my experience. Not just my story, but a practical guide for older women trapped in toxic family relationships. I contacted a Spanish publisher specializing in self-help and personal growth books. The editor, a woman named Montserrat, was immediately interested. "Linda," she told me during our meeting, "your story touches on a topic that affects millions of women, but is rarely discussed openly. Emotional abuse by adult children is an epidemic problem that needs to be exposed." I spent the next 3 months writing When Love Hurts: Breaking Free from Family Emotional Abuse after 70. And the book documented not only my personal experience, but also practical strategies for recognizing manipulation, setting healthy boundaries, and finding the courage to prioritize one's own well-being. The book was published 8 months later and became a bestseller in several European and Latin American countries. The letters I received from readers were extraordinary. Women from all over the world wrote to me telling me how my story had given them the courage to make radical changes in their own lives. "I read your book and finally understood that I am not a bad mother for refusing to continue funding my 42-year-old son's irresponsibility," wrote Marta from Chile. "Your story helped me understand that true love does not demand self-destruction," shared Teresa from Portugal. "After reading your book, I sold my large house and moved to a small apartment I can afford without depending on my children's help. For the first time in years, I sleep peacefully," related Sofia from Argentina, but the letter that moved me the most arrived a year after the book's publication. It was from a young mother named Paula. "Mrs. Aguirre," she wrote, "I am 32 years old and have a 67-year-old mother who has sacrificed her entire life for me and my siblings. After reading your book, I realized we are treating her exactly as Emily treated you. Your story opened my eyes and made me understand that I was repeating a toxic pattern that could destroy my relationship with my mother forever. Yesterday I called my mother and apologized for all the years of taking her for granted. I also told her that I want to help her achieve her own dreams instead of expecting her to always be available for mine. Thank you for helping me understand this before it was too late." That letter made me cry with joy. My pain had served to prevent other families from going through the same destruction. 2 years after my arrival in Spain, I received a physical letter in my mailbox. The handwriting on the envelope was familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. When I opened it, my heart raced. It was from my grandsons, now 13 years old. "Dear Grandma Linda," they wrote in teenage handwriting, "Dad told us the truth about why you left. He said Mom told you very cruel things, and that's why you decided to start a new life far away from us. We want you to know that we miss you very much and we understand why you left. We also want you to know that we are proud of you for being so brave. When we are older, we would like to visit you in Spain if you would have us." The letter included drawings they had made of me living happily on the streets of Barcelona. I cried for an hour after reading that letter. Not out of sadness, but from the understanding that my decision to preserve my dignity had been the right one, even if it meant moving away from people I loved. I decided to write back. "My dear grandsons," I wrote, "your words are the most beautiful gift I have received in years. I love you deeply, and I will always love you no matter the distance. When you are older and can make your own decisions, the doors of my heart and my home will always be open for you. Until then, I want you to know that Grandma is living a full and happy life, surrounded by beauty and peace. Hold on to that love you feel for me, but also learn from this experience. Words have the power to build or destroy, and relationships are based on mutual respect, not unilateral sacrifice. I love you with all my heart." Today, 3 years after that terrible birthday that changed my life forever, I am sitting on the balcony of my new apartment in Barcelona, which I bought with my own money, looking out at the Mediterranean Sea as I write the final lines of my story. I am 77 years old with a net worth of over $6 million, a best-selling book translated into 8 languages, dear friends from all over the world, and an inner peace I never thought I would experience again. Emily asked for a birthday present for me to disappear from her life. I granted her that wish in the most extraordinary way possible. What she never calculated was that by losing me, she not only lost a mother who loved her unconditionally, but also the person who had kept her financial world stable for decades. Last week, I received an email from Emily, the first direct contact in 3 years. "Mom," she wrote, "I read your book. I never imagined how much I hurt you, how much you sacrificed for me, how much I took you for granted my whole life. I'm not asking you to come back or to forgive me. I just want you to know that I finally understood what you tried to teach me, albeit in the hardest way. I hope you are happy in your new life because you deserve all the happiness in the world." I did not reply to the email. Some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. But I kept her words in my heart, not as a victory, but as confirmation that all pain can eventually be transformed into wisdom. My disappearance was my gift to her. My new life was my gift to me. And it was worth every tear, every sacrifice, every moment of pain that brought me here. Because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to have the courage to lose yourself completely, only to be reborn as the person you were always meant to be. Now, if you like this story, click on this next video appearing on the screen, because in it there's a story of betrayal and twists like you've never seen before.